Hi everyone, I'm Kimberly from Australia. I've been in China 14 years. I'm an entrepreneur in the wellness business and do holistic nutrition. My number one tip for achieving your China dream would be to get here and learn Chinese.
Welcome, Kimberly.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to start with, for those people who are watching who don't know you, if you could do maybe a quick self-introduction, who you are, what you do.
Sure. So I'm Kimberly from Australia. I've been in Shanghai for 14 years, it's a long time, and 2 years before that in Hangzhou studying Chinese. So I came as a student in 2001, yes, until 2003, and then back here in Shanghai in 2004. Yeah, so been a long time. Done lots of different things. I started the first half, I guess, of my China career in event management and corporate event planning, marketing, communications. And then my biggest highlight was the Olympics and the Beijing Olympics and the Shanghai World Expo. And then in 2009 I studied Chinese medicine and got really interested in the food therapy side rather than the needles or the pills or the herbs, sorry. And have been pursuing food therapy and holistic nutrition and health and all the wonderful things that go in there. And back in 2000, I think about 7 years ago, we opened a corporate wellness consulting company. There was 3 of us, and then now in the last 5 years, 2 of us, me and a business partner, had a health food store and a cooking studio. So been doing lots, as I said, lots of different things.
Yeah.
You can broadly say it's always been around events. Now we're doing healthy events rather than the corporate events or the parties or the conferences that I used to do. So my focus has been in the last 5 years to spread health and nutrition, healthy food in particular, to more Chinese students and consumers. It's very niche. What we do, but there is a growing demand for health awareness, nutrition information, and education. It's very limited here in a market that's, for me, especially in health and wellness. Every year I say it's happening, it's growing, and every year it feels like it's just starting. Yeah. Every year for the last 7 years.
Yeah. No, I remember your store. It's interesting the way you set up your store, because the store like downstairs, and then you had like the cooking workshops upstairs with like a cafe as well. And it was an interesting sort of way that you set it up. I felt like a lot of like restaurants, you go into restaurants, like it's clear, you know, it's a restaurant. And I used to come and eat lunch at your place quite a lot. And it was nice to have that environment where it felt like when you're eating there, you also like being educated, right? Like you can see what are the ingredients that are going into the food, and we're all downstairs, and you can see that. And you know, there's workshops going on in the background, and people learning like specifically how to make this stuff. So I like that sort of interactive environment.
Yeah, very, very interactive, and I think people like that as well. Like people who don't want to cook never have to cook. People who want to try or buy a few products or maybe take a class. There were not all cooking classes. We had some workshops like on detoxification. We did some healthy yoga and breakfast, so more fun events. We used to do kids events as well. So if people said, you know, how's the store? You know, you're a health food store, and I'm like, yeah, but our base has always been the education, so food education through the different experiences. But basically, you learn something when you leave.
That was one of the things that I always found unique about your place too, is that I think a lot of restaurants or places that start here with a healthy concept, they lean towards the market, and they often lose the core integrity of what they were trying to do in the first place, and it becomes less healthy. And,
for sure.
And that was one of the places that when I was there, I always felt like you're sticking true to the core values, right? You're not trying to expand, you know, and make a really huge chain or anything like that. You're sticking to the education, right? And really helping people understand what it is that they're eating.
Once they have that understanding and awareness, they're more inclined to go and take that home as a habit. Our tagline was growing healthy habits. So whether it was kids or adults or CEOs, you know, try and just shift one thing. Maybe change your white rice to brown rice, or half and half, or you know, the color of your bread, or adding in some oatmeal for breakfast, or just really small, doable things. And again, whether it was through the store or the cafe or the cooking studio. But we didn't have the cafe for the last 2 years. It was taken by another business partner, which was good because running 3 businesses in one was too much work. So I wouldn't ever recommend doing that again. Just pick one. So that was a nice key learning for us. But the store and the cooking studio worked well together because they needed each other in terms of a business model, as well as if you come and take a cooking class, then you're more inclined to see, oh, I need to eat flax seeds, and this is how you use it. Oh, where can I buy it? Right here. So I would have never just opened a health food store. The market, it wasn't and still isn't quite ready for what we know as health food stores in the West.
So I wanted to get into why you came to China in the first place, and then why you decided to stay. Like 14 years is a long time.
So I came many times before. In high school, we went to Kunming, way back then. I'm from Australia, but I'm an international expat kid back in the day, and I was born in Singapore. So from Singapore, we did lots of school excursions to Malaysia and all sorts of cool places, but we did do one to Kunming. So that was my first sort of taste. And my mum's from Hong Kong originally, but when I was young, she was always like, "You gotta learn Mandarin." So I learned a little bit, but definitely not enough. And then when I went to university, I opted to go to Hangzhou. So that was the second time I came, and that was a 1-year program, but I stayed a year and a half. And then back to Australia, and then I decided I needed to use my Chinese, so I came back to China a third time, and to Shanghai. To work and to explore what I wanted to do, and use my Chinese.
And why have you stayed around?
Why have I stayed? So when I first started, I was working in events and marketing, and then very quickly got into the events planning side. I love organizing things, and I love putting together events, and I love the reward at the end when it's all done and happening. So I just kept doing that, and then it was getting close to the Olympics. I'm like, well, I've got to stay for that. And then it was the World Expo, which was the biggest event I've ever done, and I was working at the Australian Pavilion in a bank sponsor, so the sponsorship side and the event, it was really fun. It was a really fun experience. I don't know if I'd do it again. It was really exhausting. So there was always something to get me to stay on, like the next milestone, and as an event career. And then as I said, I changed to health and wellness. And there still is so much to do in that industry, because it really is just that. And there are so many people who want to open a health food store, or a wellness center, or yoga studio, or retreats. The next thing is in China, I'm predicting, is outside of the big cities, and people opening, like you would find in Thailand or Bali or even Australia. We have really good, retreat centers or programs. That's definitely coming. So I'm happy to help people or consult on those projects. I don't know if I would ever open a restaurant again, but I love to train chefs, and so I'm still here because I see that there's more work to do in that, in what I have been doing, and I really want to work on training chefs or helping people open bigger and better venues. So that's why I'm still here.
So in your 14 years here, what would you say is the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges that you've come across, and how did you overcome it? Okay,
I think 2 main things spring to mind. One would be in the industry and the work that we do, and one would be in the administration challenges of businesses and landlords and paying rent and all that. So I'll start with the non-fun one. Well, they were both challenges. So the first challenge is, the infrastructure available here, and the administrative side. I'm very lucky. I have a local Shanghainese business partner, so she has been amazing in the last 5 years at getting all that stuff done. So that's a huge help as a foreigner here. Especially back then, it was very hard to open your own wafi or your own company. So we went with a local company. So I think navigating that is a huge challenge for anybody coming here to either start a business or be here and to do their own thing. There are amazing agencies that can help you do all this now, and it has since changed. So if you want, as a foreigner, to open a company, it's from what I gather, it's much easier. It's still expensive, but it's more established. There's people who can help you set it up. There's a category for these things. Like, it's all documented now. It's fine. So that would be one thing, and then of course just day-to-day business things like landlord issues, or you hear of people who have to move, or things change so suddenly, so the rules and grey areas change. Linked to that also being in health food, a lot of products that we have been selling, especially in the 5 years ago, were not categorized in China. So chia seeds were non-existent. People didn't know what they were. They were not on the list of China agricultural products. Okay. So you couldn't not sell them, but you couldn't sell them.
But did you import them? Or
so we never imported anything. We were just a retailer, but we had suppliers who would come to us and say, sell this. Yeah. We're like, okay, and they're like, but we can't yet sell it because it's not recognized in China. So there's been a few products like that are so new or foreign. Yeah. We're like, but we know what it is, and it's a superfood, and it's so healthy. We want to sell it. So that has been quite interesting. And things like flaxseed is not allowed. It's recently changed, I've been told, but you're not allowed to put it as an ingredient in a food because it's a medicinal plant in Chinese medicine. So when you're trying to sell healthy food, you have to know what's allowed or what's legally allowed, and in what form as a food additive or an ingredient or a finished product. So it's been an interesting time just learning about what is allowed in the West. All food is allowed if it's edible, almost. So that's one challenge. And then the other challenge, I would say, overcoming that, would be going with the flow. Like that would be my biggest tip to anybody in China is expect the unexpected, and you just have to deal with it. There's always a way around it. And if it's in a gray area, it's actually okay, because there is a way to get around it, or call it something else, or get things done. So it's an inefficient way that's quite efficient if you can understand the process. And then the other challenge for sure would be that we've been always trying to sell a product or a service or a class to people that don't know they need it yet. So nobody wants to eat healthy food because they imagine it's boring and tasteless. But if you're sick, you'll come. If a doctor says you've got to reduce your cholesterol, or you're on your way for a heart disease or diabetes, okay, fine, I'm going to learn. So we've been offering, especially in the first 2 years, it was really tough to tell people, hey, come and learn about superfoods. And I don't want to eat superfoods. I'm fine, I'm healthy, I'm young and invincible. So that has been a challenge. It has shifted. Definitely in the last 2-3 years, people want health. Wellness is a concept. It's been helped, I think, by gyms and yoga studios and the whole industry in general. Also vegetarian restaurants, salad bars, juice brands. So it's all helping the greater good of what wellness is still developing in China. But overcoming that, I just kept going. That was my stubborn way of doing it. I want to teach this. But also, of course, listening to customers. So if they want a weight loss class, we would run weight loss classes, a detox class, whatever was trendy, that themes and content that they needed.
So I think that there are a lot of misconceptions around business in China and life in China, particularly from people who haven't been on the ground here, but also maybe from people who haven't actually run their own business here. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to that, like what are some of the misconceptions that you hear or that you see that you would like to maybe write? Yeah,
as a foreigner, definitely, people know that it's difficult to do business here in some ways, and in some ways it's not. I mean, Chinese people are great, very friendly, but there is still this cultural clash. So I would say to start off would be language, would be the biggest challenge to overcome. The level of language is excellent, I think, by Chinese staff in general, depending on what industry you're in. In my industry, I mean, we had retail staff who were very junior, so it was very hard to find fluent English speakers at that level. And we didn't have a fluent English speaker. We had one who spoke a little bit, and then of course we're dealing with the AIs and the cleaning people. So, and then chefs we had when we had the cafe. So we weren't dealing with a multinational level, corporate type staff. And I've talked to many other entrepreneurs in the field where it's very challenging to work with staff who don't have maybe an international exposure or traveled overseas. But it's changing for sure. So that's one thing you have to be very aware of, the cultural norms. And as a boss, you can't just come in and go, "Hi, how are you?" And like it's a very different, seniority and respect. I walk in, and so I think I got away with a lot because I'm the crazy foreign boss. Because we had a Chinese boss and a foreign boss, so the Chinese boss would be like, "It's okay, she's being overly friendly," or you don't hug employees, but I'm like, "Hi, how are you?" How was your? And you can ask them simple things like, "Hi, how was your weekend?" At first they go, "I don't want to talk about my weekend, my boss." It's not it's not something that's open dialogue. So there's lots of small cultural things in the workplace with HR, with staff. We didn't have a huge team, but still, you just got to manage that. The other thing in Shanghai is that there's a lot of Chinese staff or employees who aren't from Shanghai. So a lot of people who come to do business when you're building your team or working with, even clients or customers, you have to be aware as well. Because it's a small thing, but it can make a difference if you're not from Shanghai and you acknowledge that and you're like, wow, so you're also a foreigner in a way, and that really opens doors and opens them up as well.
Oh, interesting.
Because the Shanghainese are very, very strong and passionate about being Shanghainese, which is great. But if you have staff or customers from elsewhere, or even our students, we had a lot of cooking students who came from other places to take our classes. They kind of feel a little bit intimidated.
Yeah.
So
Shanghai is a big, crazy place.
It's a big, crazy place, and the Shanghainese are very strong about being Shanghainese. So if you're not, it doesn't matter if you're from Ireland or Australia or Suzhou. It doesn't matter. You're a foreigner technically. So we, as international foreigners, also need to respect that. It can impact in team dynamics as well in companies. I've seen that. So just being aware of that and making all staff feel equal and all working together. In the office, of course, the Shanghainese love speaking Shanghainese. So if you have staff that aren't from Shanghai, they don't understand. And so as a foreigner, if you don't speak Chinese, you wouldn't even know that there's another whole language going on. But it's something in terms of people, recruiting or managing teams to just keep that in mind, that everybody needs to be, collectively engaged and feel equal.
So since you've been here, you've gone through different industries, you went from events and now you're sort of more in the sort of the wellness space. How has your understanding of the marketplace here shifted as you've learned more and as it's actually been shifting?
I'll answer that in wellness or nutrition business because it's more top of mind for me. But that's also hard because it's a changing market, it's an evolving market. So there's a lot of myths and misconceptions on what healthy is. Because again, food from the West, for example, unhealthy food and drinks and snack food and packaged food and junk food, it's all still quite new. So for me, understanding, at the same time trying to educate people on healthy food, they need to know why. I've always been very strong on the why, not how to eat the healthy food, but why you should be eating this food and how far away it is from your traditional food or traditional culture and habits. So there's this gap that does exist. So I've had to learn both at the same time, especially also teaching in Chinese. I have had to learn new vocabulary. I didn't learn nutrition Chinese or cooking Chinese in school many years ago, so it's been an ongoing process of learning culture and work terms and new vocabulary, as well as understanding students' needs, like what in the healthcare system is their frustrations, or what is buying groceries is a problem. Food safety is a huge issue here, so food safety in the sense of are vegetables clean and not covered in pesticides, but also food safety, like what is a healthy food. That I feel is a big gap. Not everyone realizes that you can have an organic potato chip and it doesn't mean it's a healthy product. So that has been something that's very close to my daily work, and then I've had to grow and learn and understand better people, rather than just stand up there and say, okay, I want to teach you this today. Understanding their pain points for why they're frustrated with food or health in general. But one big gap I find is that there's this lack of places or channels to learn more about nutrition. If you speak English as a Chinese person, you can go online and there's so much information about superfoods and health foods and detoxing and juicing, and so that's fine. But in terms of books or websites or experts, it's still very much in its infancy in China. So that's also been a struggle for me. How do we, give information, but we have to work with other people to give good, blogs or articles or videos or cooking classes or cooking videos, and the books are slowly coming. Like people are translating in health and nutrition. So Yeah, I've learned a lot.
And so I heard you saying earlier that you teach a lot of your workshops in Chinese.
Yes.
What would you say are the main differences between teaching to a foreign crowd and teaching to a Chinese crowd?
The first point would be the general level of nutrition or health awareness. When we teach to a foreign group, they know their spices, for example. They know in general that they need to eat less white sugar. Like everybody, whether they want to or disagree or anything, if they love donuts, I can't stop their brownies. But they know inherently that junk food is bad, white sugar is bad. They know these things. But a Chinese group, I have to say it, and then I have to back it up. Because they got confused, and then they challenged me. Whereas if I say to a foreigner, eat less junk food, yep, I know, I've eaten too much pizza. But for Chinese people, it's like, but why? What's wrong with my milk tea with like 3 tablespoons of sugar?
You need sugar, don't you? Like blood sugar. You need sugar.
We need sugar for energy. I'm like, okay, so there's different types of sugar. So we have to go back and start and just explain that there's honey, or there's brown rice syrup, or there's coconut sugar, and sugar isn't all equally created. But a foreigner in general knows white sugar is bad. So they don't have this health awareness in school or at a younger age. So that's the biggest gap I see.
But in terms of setting up and running your own business here and marketing in Shanghai and China, how have you dealt with different marketing channels? Like, is it mostly WeChat? That's how you get your message out? Do you use other methods? Like, how do you decide?
So it's completely changed in the last 5 years. I'll go backwards. So from now, definitely WeChat. When we first started 5 years ago, there was no WeChat. It was email. People would come into our store, literally write their email. We were in another store, just nearby here actually. And so it was very much people who came in or who heard from us, and through different magazines, either Chinese magazines or English entertainment and lifestyle magazines, to spread the word. Hey, we have cooking classes. Hey, we have a superfoods store. And so it started in those kind of traditional media, and then referrals and friends, and then working with fitness people and yoga people. But again, 5 years ago, there wasn't that much in wellness going on. And if you fast forward to now, there's so many yoga studios. There's so many CrossFit gyms and circuit training gyms, and people doing healthy cooking and food, and it's exploded. Same for our store. We were the first health food store, but now you can buy everything on online grocery. Like, people are selling quinoa, they're selling oatmeal. Like, it's stuff that we aren't actually as competitive. I'll be very honest. So our marketing has evolved along as well, and definitely I would say WeChat is the only thing you need. Of course, there's other channels in terms of traditional media as well as other social media. Weibo is debatable. Some people are still using it, especially outside the bigger cities. In terms of blogging, we can write a lot more content. But for the most part, I would say to people coming here or wanting to do something here, they need to be using WeChat or familiar with it, or ready to use it. And within WeChat, there's many different functions. You can have your own. We had a company account, public account. We would post our events, our workshops, courses. We even have a WeChat store in there, so people can then go and buy oatmeal or organic soy sauce or brown rice. So the functions are a lot more. So the technology has really come up really fast. I'm not a tech person, so we have a team that does the back end, but I write a lot of the content. And then we have a team who puts together all the event posts as well. So for someone who wants to start a business here, no matter what industry, good for networking, because you have groups, you can have group functions, so you can you get joined and added to many groups, and sometimes it's too much. I'm in a lot of fitness groups, nutrition groups, which are great, but not when every day someone posts their breakfast, and then 100 people post their breakfast, and I'm like, I don't need to know about everyone's breakfast.
And then all the stickers.
And all the stickers and the emojis and all that. So it's a great tool. As a business, we have our marketing team in a group chat. We have our whole team in a group chat. The cafe, used to have their own group chat. So it's very immediate.
So is a lot of your internal communications through WeChat?
Oh, yeah. Chinese people, in my experience, love them, but they don't like emails. They really don't like emails. To the point that, I'll email the team and then, nobody will reply, and then they prefer to tell me in person the next day or the next day after that, or WeChat. Yeah, there's no sense of immediacy like we used to have with email. At the same time, the WeChat is terrible because people will like message me, "Hi, are you there?" And then I'll be like, "I'm not gonna answer that." I don't like that.
What's your intention with the way this?
Call me if it's urgent, or tell me what you want.
Yeah.
So it has changed our whole way of living in China and Asia. A lot of other people outside China use it as well, in that people demand or expect immediate responses, and it's very stressful. In terms of meditative practices or mindfulness, it's definitely not. So yeah, just setting boundaries on what that is. And I have a bad habit. Sometimes I have a thought, I'm like, oh, I'll just put it in the staff chat. But it could be 10 p.m. I don't want a reply. I don't expect a reply till tomorrow. But if someone sees it,
they feel obligated.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we got to reply. So a great tool, but definitely something that people need to use. If you don't have a company, you can just start, you have your own account with a phone number and a bank account, and then you can just post content or photos, depending again what industry you're in, and then you'll very quickly network and meet people and get added to groups. So it's great for posting events, or if you're selling something special or product or announcing things. Yeah, it's not good for big articles, it's very short and sweet and more photos and visual, but yeah, it's, I guess, like, better than WhatsApp. Not as friendly, like friends and social as Facebook. And it's a lot of functions. You can pay your bills, you can transfer people money, buy movie tickets, flights, everything. It's very, very advanced.
Yeah. As a retailer, there's now the online retail in China.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, how you made your decision to sort of focus on, you sell products to WeChat, but then maybe not join the whole Taobao revolution.
Yeah. We are and were still so niche in what we sold that when we approached other people or to sell it, like they didn't know what they wanted to sell. Like say an online supermarket, for example, either Chinese or expat facing. Even up to maybe 3 years ago, they'd be like, no one was going to buy quinoa or this or superfoods. They don't know what it is. So we did, I feel, a great service to educate people. And then they're like, oh, I want to eat more of these healthy foods and whole grains and beans and lentils and coconut sugar and all this gluten-free and these kind of things. So it has pushed the demand for these products. So more and more people are selling health foods. They have a category now. So we are very uncompetitive on that front. We used to be okay because we used to, people would think, where do you want to buy this superfood or this health food? Oh, you go to, Sprout Lifestyle, you'll go there. But now you can get a lot of stuff on the online supermarkets and platforms, and now Taobao. This is again demand and supply. There was no one buying this before, so all our suppliers 5 years ago that we would find, they would be like, you want to sell this in China? Who's going to buy gluten-free brown rice noodles? And now, of course, he does. So we've always been a bit too early. And I tell a lot of my Chinese students, I'm like, all the good stuff is being exported. Like if you want to buy organic flaxseed, it's all being shipped to Whole Foods in the US or somewhere else. So it's now shifting, and the suppliers here are realizing, oh, Chinese people want to eat health foods. And so then the local market is slowly growing. But again, I think the awareness and the education still has a long way to go.
How important would you say is speaking Chinese in setting up and running a business here?
Ideally, very important. If you have the language skills, a lot of people. When I came, by the way, 14 years ago, there was two main categories of expats here. There was like the young expat who just wanted to come, or we'd learned some Chinese and we wanted to start working here, and then there was like CEOs and very senior people that were sent to run businesses here. And then not a whole lot in between. But I don't know, maybe in the first 3-4 years when I was here, I started realizing, wow, there's people who are coming or being sent here in that sort of younger in their corporate career, but not just graduated. And a whole other category of people just wanted to come. They're like, I'm going to go to China and work in whatever industry they were in, law, advertising, fashion, like it was an attractive place to come. And what I started seeing was more and more people who didn't speak Chinese. So of course, if you speak Chinese and you've gone through the whole of university, half my degree was in studying Mandarin and Chinese culture, it's a huge asset. But I was kind of like, wow, I would never come here with no Chinese skills. But it works, and they can get by and they can do great things. you have to have good business partners and good idea, or a job that doesn't require you to speak Chinese. But I would still encourage everyone to learn some Chinese, even if you come here and take lessons. I think it's important to really to get into the culture, but also to just, in terms of smoother operations. So you can understand more, even just on a physical level, but also the nuances of, I don't know, talking to a policeman on the street or the post office, or just getting things done. If you have a little bit of Chinese, it would really, really help. Is it essential? Really depends on the job or the industry. So a lot of maybe bankers or lawyers, I don't know, depending on the role of your job. If you're an international company, probably not all your co-workers who speak English. But I personally believe in going anywhere. If you want to spend a few years there or a long time to learn, I would if I moved somewhere else, into another culture. I would make an effort personally to learn some. It might take you a while to get fluent in Chinese, and especially the writing. That slows you down a lot. So if you don't want to learn the writing, don't focus too much on that, but just get simple conversation going. But I think it helps in terms of managing teams, working with your co-workers, customers, clients, being able to just get around and travel. It reduces the frustrations, I would say.
Going with the speed of business and how things are changing so rapidly here, how do you make your next move? How do you decide what your strategy is or what your planning is over the next few months or years?
Well, the last few years we've been in sort of autopilot mode, to be really honest with you, because in the first few years it was very much new things and growing, and we were still in a position of being the only ones. We were still in the position of up until last month of the only ones teaching health cooking, like nutrition and cooking. But to keep changing and evolving, you have to see what, for us it was to see what people's pain points were. And so more and more disease in my family. Everybody I know has cancer or diabetes or is overweight, or my child has this food allergy. So we're starting to see the same problems as the West. So as we saw this, okay, well, we have to change our content, we have to have different classes, we have to take care of the students who've been with us for 4 or 5 years, and give them new content and more advanced studies. So just going with the consumer, and in our industry, you can see it quite visibly, and you can hear it from the students. So and following different trends. I think especially in big cities in China, that the trends from overseas are very quickly adopted here in any industry. So just being ready for that, and then being able to apply it into the Chinese consumer is important.
And looking at the market as a whole, because you've also straddled a few different areas, what would you say are some untapped opportunities that still exist here if people wanted to get in?
In industry or anything? I mean, I'm going to answer that quickly with my industry. I think it's wide open. The Chinese consumer still hasn't, not the mass market for sure, and even it's still a niche market, but the niche itself can be bigger. The second level of, we have the early adopters now. They're the eco-friendly, I don't want chemicals, I want to eat whole grains, I do yoga, I drink green smoothie kind of. It's a very small amount. It's growing. But for me, focusing on those people that are really interested in what we have to offer is important. So that's my industry in particular. But so for health and wellness, a lot. I think products is huge. What I see the biggest niche, if I had to pick one, would be health food snacks. I think I'm waiting, and I'd love to help brands to create Chinese consumer, granola bars, muesli bars.
Like to go into the convenience stores, like Family Mart? And
Like there's none that are locally made. There's one wonderful brand in Yunnan that we've stocked, but they're the only bar that's available in the whole China. Like no one else is making them. There are some that are imported into the supermarkets. I wouldn't eat them. They're full of sugar. So for me, that doesn't count. So that's what I'm saying. There's a gap between normal muesli bars and the healthy, like the really genuinely healthy ones, which are abundant in Canada and America and Australia. Like, there's so many ready-to-go snack foods, healthy, products. So products, health food products, I think there's a huge gap in my industry. In other industries, I think there's still space for growth in creative industries, in maybe in more corporate things like advertising, or I don't know, I'm thinking off the top of my head, finance or banking. The level of, I mean, this is not my expertise, but the level of staff, Chinese staff with very good education, overseas experience, fluent English, whatever, is increasing. So there may be a less need for an expensive foreigner. I would say.
In terms of a career here, in that way, yeah. Especially
if you're coming in at a lower experience level, the local talent is really advancing. So I don't know that they would need to hire foreigners. But in terms of setting up your own business, I think trading is still huge. It's a wonderful potential for people in fashion that is growing a lot too, like designing here and selling overseas. So product sourcing is China's still a very attractive place to buy stuff and sell overseas. But in terms of corporate, like office type things, I think that it's a bit tougher to come and say, I want to get a job, here, unless you're sent here by your existing company who has an office here. So I think there would be two ways. If you're watching and you're like, I'm overseas, and you want to come to China, find a way to come here with a job or look for opportunities. And then if you want to come and do your own thing, then stick to obviously what your passion and experience is, because there are opportunities.
How important would you say were those few years where you were running events before you really set up your own business in terms of your success in the market?
I think it was crucial to understanding the Chinese psyche and the consumers' minds. I didn't know I was going into health and wellness, but having worked in a bank and worked in event agencies and worked in office environments, I would see how people bring their lunch or order food or eat snacks in the afternoon. So I would understand my consumer and my target market later. So I think in any role or way that people come here, it's very valuable. Like soak up what people's behavior, observe and watch is really important. Observing just what people do and why they do it. And traditional habits is really important.